We will not achieve animal liberation without grassroots activism.
Welcome to the Our Hen House interview. This is Jasmin Singer.
This is Mariann Sullivan.
And we're so happy today because our guests are just so fabulous. And you'll already know that they're fabulous just by their names. Tehilah, otherwise going by Penny today, and Suzie Stork. Welcome to Our Hen House. We're so excited that both of you are here.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Penny and Suzie are no strangers to the animal protection movement or what we're trying to do here at Our Hen House to change the world for animals. Penny is the executive director of the Animal Activism Collective, AAC, an animal rights organization that's focused on grassroots mobilization and activist training that has helped bring hundreds of new activists into the movement through its mentorship program, among other things, while supporting the launch of dozens of local grassroots groups across the United States. Suzie is the executive director of the Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade, CAFT, one of the most successful anti-fur organizations with an international grassroots network spanning more than 50 cities. And we wanted to talk today about the power of campaigning and how to build an effective campaign. Just a reminder before we get into this for our listeners and our viewers that the Our Hen House podcasts, it's a whole universe of podcasts, as I like to say. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, The Hen Report on Thursdays, and the long form interview, that's this, on Fridays. Bonus for Flock members comes out on Mondays. And you also have some opportunities to join us live if you are in the flock at various levels. So check that out. We're on YouTube. We're on all podcatchers. So hit subscribe and like wherever you listen. So both of us, both Mariann and I started, well, I would say certainly I started in grassroots. But Mariann, you to a very large extent, even though you came to animal rights by way of the law, you did quite a lot of protests as a protester.
Actually, and I mean that was a long time ago, really long, probably in the 90s. But it was mostly fur, and I think the CAFT was around back then. I mean, CAFT has been around for a long time. But every week I would walk down the block, two blocks to Houston Street in Manhattan, and protest at a fur store. That was kind of the first activism I did. Yeah, circus protests. Circus is gone. Well, no, they're not all gone, but Ringling Brothers is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And fur is on the ropes, and that's what we're going to talk about.
And I, when I worked for Farm Sanctuary like 20 years ago, used to run their anti-foie gras protests. And now there's that potential news in New York City regarding the sale of foie gras. You know, fingers crossed. So, like, it does work. I mean, it's very clear that it works.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that was like a million years ago.
I know.
So it takes a long time.
It can. And I think that our two guests today are perfectly situated to talk about effective and ineffective campaigning. So, Penny, let's start with you. Can you briefly describe for people who are unfamiliar with your work what the Animal Activism Collective is?
So I would describe AAC in a nutshell as probably the largest movement building organization, definitely in the US. So we specialize in recruiting and training activists to be the most effective animal advocates that they can be. And we have a bunch of programs in various ways that we do that. We have our mentorship program. So that's really for people who want like one-on-one training with an activist. So anybody can apply to become a mentee. They applied to the mentorship program. They fill out a questionnaire, like what they're interested in, what their background is, and we pair them with one of our experienced mentors from all across the world. And that's a 3-month program, and you can get like one-on-one dedicated help to help you like achieve your activism goals. We also have a pressure campaign program. And I know like pressure campaigning and campaigns is mainly what we're going to talk about today. And that's our newest program. It really just launched this year. This is for people who want to learn how to organize their own pressure campaigns or get connected to the global or national pressure campaigns currently happening. They can apply there and they'll work with someone from AAC to get more plugged into those networks. We also do a number of other things. We have convergences, which are like big usually like 10-day activism events in a certain city. But I'd say really what we specialize in is recruiting new activists into the movement, training them to get connected with groups like CAFT and ICAW, International Council for Animal Welfare, which is another group we work with a lot, just to really get networked in with the most effective and impactful pressure campaigns happening today.
And Suzie, how about you? Can you just give us the brief overview of CAFT and its work before we get into details?
CAFT's mission is to end the fur industry once and for all, and finally. And our strategy thus far has been to, run pressure campaigns against companies, institutions, organizations that are still profiting or promoting fur. Our campaigns are decentralized, so that means anyone, anywhere can get involved. There's no need to ask permission. And CAF's leadership, we do the research, we pick the targets, we come up with the campaign materials, we disseminate information. And currently, like Jasmin mentioned, we represent grassroots groups in over 50 cities internationally. And these are boots on the ground activists participating in these campaigns. And collectively, they organize around 300 actions a year. Our network just keeps on growing. We have secured fur-free policies from 18 companies affecting over 100 brands. And we've almost completely gotten real fur removed from luxury fashion. We haven't lost a single campaign yet. Oh, we actually just got the Emmys to ban fur on the red carpet, which is really nice. It's a nice cultural win. But yeah, I mean, we believe that in order to achieve animal liberation, we need to start by building a model of how to shut down an industry. Right now, we're poised to do that with the fur industry. It's at its lowest point in history. And so our goal is to build a grassroots movement that is fighting to win, not just fighting to fight. So, the grassroots movement has limited time and resources. And so we really just want the grassroots to focus our time and energy where we can make the most impact. And we think the fur industry is one of those industries where we can really just shut it down. Like our generation of activists can be the ones to end it.
Is that like is part of your theory of change? It kind of is reminding me of the old shack days, but picking one target. In that case, it was a company, but in your case, it's an industry. And is part of your global big theory of change that if you can take down one industry, that will lead to the techniques and the ability to mobilize to take down other industries as well? Or when we get rid of fur, you're going to retire?
No, we certainly won't retire. Yeah, you're correct. Right now, like we're building a blueprint for how to end an industry. It's not going to end with fur. Fur is just like the most vulnerable target right now. Like I mentioned, it's at its lowest point in history. If we don't end it now, there's a possibility that it's going to rebound. So yeah, that's where we're focusing most of our attention. And yeah, like once the fur industry is over and done with, hopefully, within the next decade, we can move on to the next most vulnerable industry.
Oh, that's so great to hear. And you mentioned that there's a third organization that's part of your coalition as well, International Council for Animal Welfare, but unfortunately they weren't able to be here today. Can either of you tell us a little bit about how they fit in?
Right now, CAFT, AAC, and ICAW have this coalition that we've formed. We met each other early last year and just started talking about how all three of us have a real interest in the grassroots and how we all believe that local campaigning and the grassroots animal rights movement is intrinsic to animal liberation. So I guess maybe the most succinct way that ICAW fits into the coalition is AAC is really like the movement builder for both ICAW and CAFT, which are like the campaigning organizations. So AAC kind of trains the activists and plugs them into both CAFT and ICAW. CAFT, does the fur campaigns, and ICAW works exclusively with animal welfare commitments. So cage-free commitments and shrimp welfare commitments. So these are just like two ways that the grassroots animal rights movement can kind of tackle both sides of the industries.
So before we get into the specific campaigns that you've joined forces on, I'd just like to get a little more general information. Maybe, Suzie, since you're actually doing the campaigns, maybe I'll ask you this, but please feel free to add, Penny, anything you have. Can you just describe what a corporate pressure campaign is? I mean, I know they're not all the same, but just in general, like what kind of target you pick and how you talk them into doing what you want to do.
A corporate pressure campaign is basically when we focus exclusively on one company. We have one very specific ask. In our case, it's, we're asking for a fur-free policy. In ICAW's case, they're asking for a cage-free commitment. And so we focus all of our energy and time and resources on pressuring this company. We do this several ways through secondary campaigns, tertiary campaigns. So that means sort of, disrupting and causing tensions amongst business relationships that, company number one has with company number two until, they don't want to deal with us. They don't want a bunch of protesters outside of their door, outside of their offices. So our job as activists is to just build that pressure until they say, you know what, it's not worth it to deal in fur, or it's not worth it to not have this cage-free campaign. So let's just give it to them. And like part of the reason why our campaigns are effective is because we're running campaigns that are winnable. We know that like our asks are achievable. Activists trust our strategy and our results. I mean, the results speak for themselves. ICAW is a very successful organization. Like I mentioned, CAFT has been running campaigns that, they last sometimes days, sometimes a year, sometimes months. But in the end, we always get what we're asking for.
How do you decide which campaigns to take on, Suzie?
A lot of research goes into it. A lot of research. Probably, I don't even know how much, but we have a very talented team of campaigners, in our leadership team, people that have been doing this for years. And so, yeah, like traditionally with CAFT, like we have focused on, going against luxury designers, retailers. And part of the reason why is because like the luxury sector is really important to the fur industry. Yeah, I mean, we just look for who's most vulnerable, who we think that we can move. I think like the cultural relevance is also like really important. Like we've gotten fur-free policies from Max Mara, Marc Jacobs, most recently Rick Owens. These are designers that the fashion industry cares about. So like when they go fur-free, it's in the news and it makes the rounds and everybody hears about it. So yeah, we try to make fur less and less culturally relevant.
So Penny, what would you consider? I mean, I know you're doing more the trading the activists than designing the campaigns, as you mentioned. But what do you consider the kind of elements of a successful corporate campaign that you're eager to get people involved in, and how do you help them gain the necessary? I assume you kind of feed people into other organizations and other campaigns.
Yeah, that's right.
So how do you help them get ready for that and get the necessary skills or maybe courage or whatever it is they need to succeed?
To the first part of your question, like something that makes a good campaign, I'd say something Suzie touched on, and like the biggest part is just something that's winnable, something that's like achievable and not such like an insurmountable goal. That's the thing that really sets groups like CAFT and ICAW apart, is they're doing things that are like winnable and achievable and like ways that we can like tangibly move the needle forward for animals. And when that's like a big concept that we teach activists when they start their own local pressure campaigns, because sometimes based on where an activist is in the world, if there's not a target that's a part of these bigger national campaigns that they can hit, starting their own local campaign is actually a great way to teach them these skills. And then like to your question about how do we teach activists these skills necessary to take part, our programs are a great way for that. Like our mentorship program, just working one-on-one with an activist who has done a lot of this work before, who's participated in a lot of pressure campaigns, who can show them that, attending a protest isn't as scary as it might sound. And it's actually a lot less risky than a lot of people might think. And then honestly, just like getting your boots on the ground and getting out there and doing it. That is a great way to learn those skills. And then, of course, our pressure campaign program, that's really the whole reason we created the pressure campaign program, is because as AAC started getting like more involved with pressure campaigning over the last few years, we were kind of doing that work like informally of just teaching people how to make their own pressure campaigns. And we noticed there was like a lot of demand for that. Like a lot of activists wanted to organize their own pressure campaigns in their communities. So we started like this formalized program where you can go and sign up and like step by step learn everything it takes, from like research to target selection to becoming a good organizer and a good recruiter in your local communities. So yeah, the programs are really like a formalized way of learning all these skills.
That's so cool. Gosh, I wish this was available when I was a little tadpole activist and trying to learn the hard way by fucking up constantly. But let's talk a
I
little.
agree, but I also want to add to it. This is just a comment, but it just really, another thing it doesn't remind me of when I was first starting to do protests and whatever, is that you guys get along with each other. I mean, I don't know if that's
You do.
hard, but it sure used to be hard. Everybody hated each other. It was very wearing.
That's really funny. I mean, maybe they're like secretly absolutely loathe each. No, kidding. You guys like each other. I can tell. So let's talk a little bit about goals, because I think that this is a really important part of pressure campaigns to clarify. And obviously, it's frequently not possible to achieve everything we want with a pressure campaign, especially if you're limited to things that are winnable. With some, like fur, you can, for example, seek to have a retailer simply stop selling it. But Penny, there are other campaigns that have essentially welfareist goals. So how do you decide goals that you're willing to go after, even if they will always fall short of what your campaigners actually want?
That's a really good question. And as AAC has started to work like more with the welfare groups and specifically more with ICOD, that's something we've really had to think about. And I think it really just comes down to like, what can we actually do for animals? Because at the end of the day, we don't want, it to stop at more hens out of cages. We want it to stop at, the abolishment of the entire animal agriculture industry. That's what all of us want. All of us are vegan. We all love animals and like champion for their complete liberation. But that is just not going to happen in the timeline that we wanted to. And what we can achieve is getting hundreds of millions of these animals out of cages and vastly improving their lives like right now, or at least a lot quicker than just, screaming at these companies to completely shut down and that ultimately not happening. Honestly, once we have kind of explained it to our audience and our activists like that, it was, everyone pretty much got it. And I think it probably was such an easy transition because we'd all been working on fur and foie gras campaigns for so long. Ideally, we don't want it all to stop at like fur or foie gras. Idealistically, we want all of these industries to end. But, what can we do for animals right now is, get these companies to ban fur, get these restaurants to remove foie gras from their menus. And a lot of these wins can happen quickly, and it like helps animals in the immediate. So that's kind of like the main principle that we work with. And then we just get more and more wins for animals. And that kind of, I don't know if moves the goalpost is the right term. But, once we just keep stacking up these wins, then we can go after like these harder, more steep goals that, that work more towards animal liberation.
I just want to jump in real quick with a follow-up.
Yeah.
Sorry to step on you, Mariann. And this is like the most annoying question I'm going to ask today, just so that you're emotionally prepared. Because of the fact that this interview is for Our Hen House and like the listeners are very deep in this, I'm going to ask you, Penny, to address the whole controversy that some people still have around single issue campaigning. And just because I personally don't think our listeners, I don't think most of them would draw a line there, but it's very possible people they know would. And what I mean is for those of you listening and have no idea what I'm talking about, there are a subset of animal activists who, of course, feel like any one single campaign that's not like addressing the broader issue of animal exploitation is harmful. So, Penny, can you speak to that a little bit?
Or even, if I can just refine
Yeah.
the question a little bit, or even a campaign, and I know, like cage free campaign, anything that doesn't, and I think that's why there's been so much focus on fur and foie gras, because you can imagine getting rid of the whole industry and this whole welfare versus rights controversy, basically, which has caused so much dissension within the movement and so much disagreement. How do you deal with it? I mean, because I think people are very sincere when they bring it up. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, they're worried that that we might be setting ourselves back. So how do you deal with that and have that conversation?
It's funny that you think that's a tag on to the same question, because I actually think those are two very, very separate questions, the single issue campaign and the welfare campaign issue. But I'll stop talking. Penny, help.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I confused the issue.
I don't think you confused it. I could see why you brought it up together, but I personally think they're very different. Penny, what do you think?
I think that's a great question. And honestly, I do kind of see a similarity in like that you were talking about, Mariann, about the single issue campaigns and the welfare campaigns. And this is a concern that I'd had years ago. Like back when I first started activism, I got my start doing vegan outreach. So that was like exclusively what I did for years. And my goal was to make everybody vegan. That was my goal. And even when I first got introduced to anti-fur pressure campaigning, I kind of had this hesitancy. I'm like, I'm just asking these brands to remove fur from their shelves. What about the leather? What about,
the down?
Anything. Yeah, down, exactly. Feathers, anything. And an activist explained it to me like this, which I think I also see this applied to the welfare campaigns. And it's kind of the visual that I used to explain people about why welfare campaigns are worthwhile too. If you are standing here and there are two cages in front of you and there's an animal like in both of these cages, one of the cages just has like a lock on it. It's a regular cage with a lock. And then the other cage has a lock on it, and it's inside of another big cage, which has a biosecurity panel, and it's guarded by lasers and armed guards, and it's much more heavily reinforced. And in your hand, you have a pair of bolt cutters. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to the cage with just a lock that you can easily cut with bolt cutters and get that animal out? And then maybe start working on the more heavily reinforced cage? Or are you just going to toil away at this cage that you really can't make any progress in and let this animal continue to languish in the cage that you could easily remove them from? Mm-hmm. And of course, like the cage that you can easily open is, in this case, would be the welfare issue or the single issue pressure campaign. And the more heavily reinforced one is like all of animal agriculture. So of course, both of those animals equally matter. We want both of those animals out of those cages, but it's like, what can I do right now? How can I make a difference? That's what I'm going to do. And then once I have more skills, then I'm going to start working on that bigger, more heavily reinforced one.
Did you want to add anything to that, Suzie? Because I know it's an issue we've all struggled with and come to our own conclusions about.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with what Penny just said. And it kind of like goes back to something I said before. Like our movement, we do have like limited time and resources, so we might as well focus our energy where we can make the most impact. And we've heard that before with like, when we're going after companies asking for a fur-free policy, it's like, oh, well, why aren't you asking for leather? Or like, why aren't you asking for wool? It's like, well, they're not going to give us anything. If we're asking for everything at once, they're just going to laugh in our face. So let's ask them for what they can give us. Like fur is not a huge, like just using fur as an example, fur is not like doesn't make up a huge percentage of the companies that we're campaigning against, but they have a lot of cultural relevance. So like if they go for free, it kind of says something. It signals something to the fashion industry at large. Yeah, and I think there's also something to be said about, just running these campaigns, the cage-free campaigns, the fur campaigns, the foie gras campaigns. These campaigns are winnable. And I think that activists are learning skills as they go while they're working on these campaigns. So I mentioned before that CAFT's campaigns are, decentralized, so anyone anywhere can join. But that doesn't mean that these activists are left on their own. We're constantly talking and advising these groups, and our campaigning strategy is something that we want activists to learn. We want to teach them these skills. We want them to be able to run these campaigns on their own. And what we see is a lot of these local groups, especially when they're participating in these like international campaigns, not only are they part of like something bigger, but they really take ownership of their group's role in this large campaign. So I do think that these campaigns also serve as a training ground and help build leadership from the ground up. This is like going to be the next generation of activists, and hopefully they'll be not working on the fur industry anymore because it'll be gone. But for the next issue, they're going to have these skills.
I have a follow-up question for you, Suzie, and in order to ask it, I need to give you access to a very scary place, which is the inside of my brain. So here's what happened when you were talking just now. These are the things that went through my head. First, I thought of Ridgeland and how 22, as of this recording, I think 22 dogs were rescued. But there's thousands who weren't, and I thought, but those 22 were. And, those are entire lives for those 22 individuals. Then I thought of the starfish story, which everyone has heard, which is like, the boy walking on the beach and there's all these starfish and he's tossing them back in the water one by one. And someone says, you'll never save all of them. And he says, well, I just saved that one. I botched the story, but that's more or less it. And then you said something along the lines of, we want to have the most effective campaign. We want to be able to, and I'm paraphrasing, impact the most animals possible. Is that starfish story an example of affecting the most lives possible? Is grassroots work affecting the most lives possible? And I'm just, full transparency, I hugely believe in this. I mean, I'm loving this conversation. I love this topic. It's really important to Our Hen House as an organization, and I think it's the heartbeat in many ways of the animal protection movement. But speaking as a naysayer for just a second, I think especially under this umbrella of effective altruism, for example, can you speak to the effectiveness of the, bigger issue, like the monstrosity of animal exploitation, and whether these campaigns make a dent?
I definitely think these campaigns are making a dent. I mean, the grassroots animal rights movement is small. Like part of the goal that we have with these campaigns, like I said before, is not just like ending an entire industry, which we can do, but it's building people power and mobilizing and getting more people involved. With the Ridgeland story, obviously, like there's still thousands of dogs that were left in there, but 22 were saved. And I think when people see that, hopefully it'll, open people's eyes to animal exploitation, to experimentation. The same thing with the fur industry. I think it was in 2020, there were like over 100 million animals that were being killed for fur. In 2024, that number went down to around 20 million. So
Wow.
there's definitely things happening. I think especially with the fur industry, COVID-19 definitely, hit the industry very hard, especially the mink populations. There was like high transmission infection rates. A lot of animals were culled. It was pretty horrific. So CAFT kind of like took advantage of that and hit the industry when it was down. So like we have to like as activists like see these opportunities, see these vulnerabilities in these industries and take advantage of it. COVID-19 initiated that decline, but our campaigns and the anti-fur movement have accelerated that decline. I mean, Poland was the second largest producer of fur. They just banned it. So I think that speaks volumes.
Wow.
Yeah, I think kick them when they're down is one of the most important principles of activism. So getting out of theory and who we should be targeting, let's talk a little bit about tactics, specifically for working on corporate campaigns, like your decision making about what what are these activists doing? I mean, obviously there are things that the big groups are doing, that they're maybe in the boardroom doing negotiations. What is the role of grassroots activists in whatever kind of campaign, and how do you decide what works where and on whom?
The main benefit of grassroots activism is that grassroots activists are willing to do what these bigger groups cannot do, whether that be because of whatever restrictions they have imposed upon them. The random person on the street does not have those restrictions. So they can do a lot of stuff that is deemed like riskier or just, something like that, like protesting or disrupting big events. That's something our activists do a lot. Is disrupting like the key targets at speaking engagements or important things where a crazy person screaming at them would otherwise embarrass them and encourage them to do the thing we're asking them to do. Stuff like that, stuff that just the bigger groups cannot do. And I think that's like the main benefit that grassroots activists bring. That kind of just speaks to the larger benefit of grassroots activism, is that it's decentralized and it's really just people that make up this movement. And that is nearly impossible for our oppressors, whether that's the state or these companies, to repress. Larger groups with more funding and like bigger names behind them are much easier to repress than random people that our oppressors and our adversaries don't really know. So that's the main benefit, I think.
I'll add to that too. Especially with CAFT and also with ICAW. Our protests are loud, they're disruptive, we're annoying. Like when we show up with megaphones, vuvuzelas, which are these very loud horns, whistles. When we're protesting outside of an event, a luxury store, an executive's house, we just try to be as annoying and disruptive as possible. Like, we aren't there to outreach the public, we're there to put pressure on the target. At the end of the day, like, we want these companies to know that dealing with us is just not worth it. Like when we campaigned against Condé Nast, the publisher of Vogue magazine, Vanity Fair, Glamour, a bunch of other titles. It was a 9-month campaign. A 9-month campaign. We had, I think, it was definitely over 100 protests. 20 different cities were involved. We were protesting weekly. At one point towards the end of the campaign, we started protesting outside the homes of executives and people that were working at Vogue, at Condé Nast. Roger Lynch, who is the CEO of Condé Nast, he was like the keynote speaker at a graduation ceremony in California, in LA. People shouted him off of the stage. Activists found a way to get into the graduation ceremony, and as soon as he got up on stage, they started screaming at him. So it's, we really like show up everywhere they are. And I think they know this by now. When we campaigned against New York Fashion Week, it was in November to December. It was a 20-day campaign in 2025. Obviously, we were asking them to ban fur on the runway. The board of New York Fashion Week was made up of designers that CAFT had already campaigned against. So they were familiar with our work. Activists showed up at the offices of New York Fashion Week. Some of them even went all the way up to like I think it was the 20th or 22nd floor where they had their offices. And, I think at that point, our reputation was pretty much well known in the industry. I mean, the fashion industry is pretty small. They all talk with each other. So yeah, I think they knew what was coming, and they gave us a policy pretty quickly.
You're so badass.
No, that relates to my question.
Go ahead. That's all I wanted to say.
Like, I guess this question is for it's for Penny, but maybe also for Suzie. Like this is very badass, and not everybody is badass. But they may really, really want to do something for animals. And so how do you deal with people's fears? I mean, some people probably relish being out there, but a lot of people don't, and are very nervous, especially if they haven't done it before. They're nervous of what could get them arrested. They're nervous about violence. What do you tell them? How do you tell them to deal with that?
It's a great question, and I think it's a very important one. The first thing I'd say is that there are many different roles at a protest. You don't always have to be the one screaming and in front and, looking nuts. We have a lot of people who that's really not like their forte. So maybe they stand on the outskirts. Sometimes we have educational leaflets, even though like our goal is not to educate the public, doesn't hurt to gain a supporter. And if that's, something that an activist wants to do, there's educational leaflets. Also, it is embarrassing for the brand if people are going inside, like having these leaflets and being like, do you guys really do this messed up stuff? So that's something that people can do. Of course, you can always just stand there and hold a sign. You can do chalking on the ground. That's where it's legal, of course. That's something we encourage people to do a lot. So at a protest in and of itself, there are a lot of different roles. But of course, for all these campaigns, there's always digital actions you can do, targeting these companies through like commenting or emails. Sometimes with these campaigns, there are maybe legislative components that you can do. There's certainly legislative efforts that you can do to kind of support these existing campaigns, like legislative efforts against fur or against like foie gras or caged hens, like more broadly. So even in the efforts to like support these specific campaigns, there are a lot of different tactics and things you can do.
I want to add something to that as well. Yeah, I think that's just like the beauty of a pressure campaign. There's so many things that need to get done, and there's so many roles. So like you don't necessarily have to be like the one shouting on a megaphone, like running up to like the 20th floor and confronting executives. There's so many needs. Research, like I mentioned, researching these campaigns is such a time commitment. And it's something that we try to teach activists. If, hey, like there's a secondary campaign, there's like for example, there's a sponsor of Milan Fashion Week and their headquarters is in your city. Here's how to do research. Here's how to look for some of the events that they're going to be at. Here's how to make a flyer. So yeah, there's like many different things that people can do. And I think that's just like I said, the beauty of a pressure campaign. Video editing, for instance, is another thing that we constantly need. And in terms of, people being like nervous or scared to attend a protest, I do think that like, especially for protests and like rowdier protests get, a bad reputation and people think like, oh, I'm going to get arrested. It's not the case. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time when you're standing on a sidewalk, on public sidewalk, holding a sign, it's your right to do that. You're well within your right to protest. It's the same thing with residential picketing. In New York City and in many cities and many states, it's perfectly legal as long as you're on a public sidewalk. And, we educate the activists and, we try to be there as much as possible. We also have Know Your Rights trainings. AALDP actually just offered that to us, which was really important.
Yeah, and just to that's the Animal Activism Legal Defense Project,
yes,
right?
Yes,
doing great work. Yeah,
absolutely amazing. They're a really wonderful resource for the grassroots movement. And yeah, like I think the more educated activists are, the stronger our movement is. And we always try to tell people like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, like standing outside of a store, standing outside of someone's house, yelling at them, like, but we have to be uncomfortable. We have to be okay with being uncomfortable because what's happening to these animals is some of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, look at footage from a fur farm, look at footage from a foie gras farm, look at footage of hens in these cages. These animals experience way more discomfort. We can give up an hour a week and stand outside and yell a little bit.
I totally agree. Except the one thing I don't necessarily agree with is that I'm not sure it's that hard to be out there. It's hard to get yourself out there. But once I think people are out there frequently, the adrenaline can really make it not exactly fun, but but empowering
Yes.
in a good way.
Yeah.
And I always remind people too, like, because people are worried about other people at the protest doing something illegal. I mean, you can leave if that happens. You're not, like it virtually never happens. If it did, you don't have to stay there. If the cops tell you to do something that they have no right to tell you to do, you can do it anyway. And that will avoid you getting arrested.
That brings up the
So
question.
It's not inevitable that you're going to get arrested just because you go to a protest.
Do you have a legal observer on site?
We don't usually, maybe sometimes for like some of the larger events, like the convergences, maybe in the past we've had. But Animal Activism Collective actually offers a really good like resource on police liaison training. That's something that we
Cool.
teach a lot of the activists to do. So
Mhm.
at every protest, at every event, even the local groups, there should be at least one police liaison. So that's the only person who speaks with law enforcement. They communicate, whatever they're telling to the activists, make sure everyone is safe.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I texted Mariann last night, and I said that this song was in my head, and it was "Don't Get Caught in a Bad Hotel," but it's from the it's like whoa, don't get caught in a bad hotel. It's from Bad Romance, obviously. This reference, and I swear I'm coming back to this interview in 1 second. Just come with me here. This reference is from a protest that happened probably in 2009-ish at a hotel in San Francisco that had bad labor practices. It was very exploitative of its workers. And so there was this coalition.
And it's when
that
it's when flash mobs were really a
yeah,
thing.
yeah, there was like, I mean, flash mobs are still a thing, but they really had a moment
Oh,
at
yeah,
that time.
yeah.
And it was just like someone checking into the hotel. There's a video of this. There was someone checking into the hotel and saying like, what? You do what to your workers? This is a bad hotel. And then just one person started singing that song, and then someone else joined, and suddenly all of these musicians come into the lobby of this hotel and start playing. Like there was tubas and I mean, it was just the most amazing thing, and it worked. Like the protest worked for all of these hotels in downtown.
Because the video went viral.
And so now it's like, I don't know, 17 years later, 18 years later, and I still think about it. And I text Mariann that I can't hear that song with the right lyrics. I can only hear it with the Bad Hotel lyrics. So it makes me think of theater as an element of protest. Do you think of street activism as a form of street theater? And are there lessons to be learned from theater, Penny?
Oh, totally. I was a big theater kid when I was younger, and I totally feel like a lot of what I'm doing at a protest is like a big act. I mean, not only because if you're taking a video, like you want the video to look engaging, there's a lot of things we do, like teach people to, if someone's giving a speak out, to crowd around them. And then, the speak out itself is, sometimes really theatrical because it's meant to engage. But yeah, I think there's a lot of elements. I hear a lot of people talk about the anger, that they're like showing. I think when you do this type of work, like multiple times a week or even like every week, you can just get a little bit apathetic maybe, or it's hard to like garner yourself to get out there and have the same like passion. I don't know if I necessarily relate to that. I'm driven by like a lot of intense emotions. So, that anger is usually fresh on the surface for
Are
me.
you a Scorpio by any chance?
I'm a Gemini.
Okay.
I'm a
That doesn't
Scorpio.
anger too many people.
Me too. Okay. Now that we know the astrological signs at play here, continue.
I'm glad we got that out of the way. It's
Yeah,
very
me too.
important. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just, acting and like hamming it up. Yeah, making sure your targets really feel the sense of urgency for them to act that you're trying to convey. Definitely disruptions always feel like a big, like when you were describing that scenario, I was like, that is an amazing idea for a disruption that we have to steal and use one day. But yeah, I do feel like it's all sometimes like one big thing. And then sometimes, to get into a place, like to do a disruption, maybe you do have to do a little acting to like get through the door or to get past security or something. And I always like that part.
Well, I mean, I was also a theater kid, and to some extent I'm still a theater kid in a 46-year-old body. But I totally agree that the yes and mentality, like, and for those of you who don't know what I mean, just from improv, you have to in an improv say yes and, or you've ended the improv. the yes and mentality is so important in activism and in protesting especially, and even just communication techniques, like the very basic communication techniques, whether it's with the cops or another a protester or an activist that you're training. So I can definitely see the parallels there. And that makes me think a little bit also about mentorship, which obviously is something you're very passionate about, Penny. Can you just talk a little bit more about mentorship and its role in what you do?
Sure. First, I'd say like the whole reason that AAC started, AAC used to be called Animal Activism Mentorship. So back in like 2020, when we first started our first program that we ever did was our mentorship program. And it really stemmed from, a lot of us who first were involved in AAC at the time. We were from like the South. We didn't know a lot of other activists or maybe even any. We were the first activists that we knew. So we were just like a gap that we saw in the movement was a way for everyone to kind of get connected and learn from one another. And I think that's the most beneficial part of mentorship. We get a lot of people who apply who are from really small areas in the world and who maybe don't have a lot of other experienced animal rights activists that they can look up to. And when they sign up to our program, not only do they get connected with like their specific mentor, who, all our mentors have been doing activism for years and years and, who usually specialize in like one form or another. But they also just get integrated in with like the entire animal rights community all across the world. So yeah, I think that that's extremely important to be able to talk through your process with somebody and to learn from someone and for someone to like show you what mistakes they made and prevent you from spending years like toiling away and making those same mistakes. It was certainly very, very important for me when I first started getting involved in activism. And I mean, we see like the mentorship program is really it's 3 months, like give or take. And people go from like having done no activism at all to being like organizers in their own community just from working with other people and getting feedback and, learning from other people's mistakes and things like that.
I imagine mentorship is part of this issue that I wanted to discuss before we let you go, because I think it's such an important one for animal activists. And this word burnout, I don't like the word burnout. Like, I think people use the word burnout when they just don't want to do it anymore for some reason. But emotional trauma is real. I mean, people being overwhelmed with the grief and sometimes paralyzing them, sometimes just ruining their lives. So, how do you help people deal with that? Is mentorship part of that?
Definitely. I think community is extremely important. It's like foundational to being in the animal rights community sustainably and for years and years. I'd say one thing that we do that I think really, really help with that is our convergences. We like provide housing for people and food for people. And we basically all live together in a house for 10 days. And we do activism. We do like back-to-back actions all day, every day. But then we come home, we usually cook a meal together, we hang out, we get to know each other. People are meeting new people for the first time. I've met like some of my best friends that I still have today at Convergences. Community is so, so important. Like in the mentorship program and in our other programs, we teach people, a good way to recruit activists to do activism is by starting things like meetups in your own community, and just having these like communal events that people are drawn to, because that's really what keeps you in the movement longer, is finding friends and people you can connect with and having a good time while you're doing this very, very difficult thing, and going up against like the longest standing oppression that has ever existed. I will say one thing our coalition is doing for the first time this year is organizing a summit, the Grassroots Animal Rights Summit. And that is also a great way for you to meet new community and new animal rights activists. It's in DC this year, and the goal is to get animal rights activists from all across the US and wherever else to come together and learn skills and also just like meet one another and form lasting relationships and lasting friendships, because that really is like so integral to activism.
I just wanted to add something, and just like touch on the convergences because I think it's like something so valuable that AAC offers. It's really an opportunity for people to make community and meet people and skill share. And a lot of the convergences, we all like experience things together. Like we work on campaigns. We won a major campaign, anti-fur campaign. We won the Marc Jacobs campaign during the convergence. And I think it was like on the last day of the convergence in
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nice
2024.
timing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, just to see like everybody there was just like so excited. Like, some of these people, they live in, I don't know, like Penny mentioned, like a small city or a small town. They don't have a lot of international targets. They come to the convergence and they participate in these campaigns and these protests. And right before they go home, like they just won a major campaign. Like they were part of this win. And I think that's also, something to touch on with like burnout. I think that's why these campaigns are important because these activists are seeing the tangible results of their activism. They're a part of it. Like they're seeing these wins. In my opinion, I think that sort of reduces burnout a little bit when you're actually like seeing the results of your activism and your hard work. We also in LA, was it in January? So CAFT has a campaign against Milan Fashion Week, which is like one of the big four fashion weeks. And we've been going after their sponsors. So there was like a bunch of different cities who were campaigning against Wella, which is a hair care company, and DHL, a shipping company, all over the world. I mean, there were activists in like Japan, all over Europe, the United States, and then we all got together in LA and we started protesting Wella, which has a headquarters there, and then we also did like a few DHL protests. And during the convergence, both of them dropped their sponsorships of Milan Fashion Week.
Wow.
So it was really cool. It was really incredible. It's
Yeah.
really nice when activists get to just share that win together.
Yeah,
How often are the convergences?
We usually have like 2 to 3 a year. This year we have 2 in the US, and then in like 2 weeks we're having one in London, which is our first one outside of the US. But a couple times a year we try and do one like East Coast, West Coast US-ish. And then hopefully this year forward we will always have one in Europe as we like expand more globally.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
they're not virtual at all. They're completely in person,
No, yeah, they're in person.
which is kind of the point.
Right.
I want to check in about some upcoming campaign ideas you might have, Suzie. I mentioned earlier that when I was first starting out and I was a campaigns coordinator for Farm Sanctuary, which had a campaigns department at the time, and I was based in New York City. I inherited a campaign when I started. Farm Sanctuary was already working on this campaign to stop this store from selling foie gras, and it quickly became apparent that there was no plan around this campaign. Uh, it was, but every Sunday the same activists would come with their signs and the body cam with the footage and stand in front of this particular store in the Upper West Side and leaflet and ask people to fill out comment cards and drop them in the comment box, which the supermarket that was never directly communicated with would immediately rip up. And so I made the difficult decision to not have Farm Sanctuary spearhead that campaign anymore, but to like embolden if activists still wanted to come on Sundays, you know, keep the signs, use our materials, feel free to keep doing it. It was an education campaign, I think. It was not a corporate campaign because there was no ask or communication or strategy. That decision did not go over well with the activists at the time, but it allowed for us to focus on more strategic campaigns. Um, Tell me a little bit about what campaigns you are thinking about launching, if you can.
Well, we actually have two right now, which is not the norm for us because we're a very small organization. We only have 3 staff and 50 plus cities that are working on these
Wow.
campaigns.
It's crazy.
But we just launched, it was in January. So yeah, like I mentioned, Milan Fashion Week. So again, this is on the heels of New York Fashion Week going for free. London Fashion Week is already for free. So we're trying to get the big four. And part of the reason why fashion weeks are so important, it's because, this is where trends are born, reborn. We are just really trying to get fur out of all of these places, out of the fashion publications, the fashion weeks, retailers. We want to make it very hard for fur to be in fashion and to be sold. So yeah, we launched Milan Fashion Week. We do have like a really good network in Europe. We work with a group called Abolish Fur Worldwide. So they are kind of like connected with all the local grassroots groups. And we just organized a week of action in Milan during the women's presentations. So Milan Fashion Week it's a huge event. Lots of press coverage, lots of people attend, celebrities, all of that. So yeah, it was really successful. And it was good for mobilizing in Europe. We had I think there was like over 40 activists came together for this week. They were protesting 3 times a day outside of the fashion shows. They did some disruptions. We got really good media coverage too. And yeah, it was wonderful. I think there were like over 10 different European cities that were represented at the convergence. But yeah, so like part of our strategy is going after the sponsors of Milan Fashion Week. So like I mentioned, Wella was a sponsor, not anymore. DHL was a sponsor. Right now they have this like Italian wine organization, Franciacorta. So we're campaigning against them, a couple of their other sponsors. And yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to keep this campaign going as long as we can until we get that for free policy. I think it'll be really monumental if Milan Fashion Week goes for free. So yeah, we have that campaign. There's, I think, over 15 cities currently involved in that. And that's with like regular actions monthly. And there's many opportunities to get involved. So if anybody wants to, please reach out. There's opportunities to get involved in Europe, in the United States, in Canada.
How can they reach out to you and get involved with your efforts?
So they can visit our website, abolishfur.org. They can also reach out to us on Instagram, CAFT USA. And we have an email, action@caftusa.org. Feel free to email us, sign up to our mailing list. The link is on the website. And we publish like action reports, campaign updates, and just like ways for different people to get involved. So the mailing list is definitely important. And then the other big campaign that we have right now is against Etsy. So I'm sure
Tell me
you
more. Why?
Yes. So it's an Etsy, as you all know, e-commerce, online marketplace. We kind of like started just thinking outside of the box because, like I said, we normally campaign against, luxury fashion designers, institutions, publications. We were like, let's start thinking about like where else is fur being sold. And then we stumbled upon Etsy and they just have like thousands of listings with real fur, and it's from furriers to trappers, like pelts. And
God.
Etsy just seemed like a vulnerable company. Like they claim they care about like sustainability. They have this whole like handmade ethos. What we found is that a lot of the fur products that are listed on there are coming from drop shippers. So it's like the same products that can be found on like AliExpress, DHgate. It's a far cry from Etsy's handmade ethos. So yeah, I mean, it's just I think this campaign is like when we win, it'll be super impactful. It'll just leave the fur industry with fewer places to sell its product, or its products. And e-commerce is a really critical and I think largely untapped frontier in, the fight to end the fur trade. So I think it'll also set a precedent for campaigning against like similar platforms. And
Yeah, it makes me think of like Poshmark and ThreadUp and makes me wonder what their policies are. It's really, really creative thinking, unlike
yeah,
the grocery store campaign I inherited. But it's good to know that there's
yeah,
like a lot of just so much brain power that's going into this. I cannot believe you're a team of 3. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
3,
So-
and we have, volunteers.
Sure, of course, I get it, but Mariann, you were going to say
So
something.
Penny, just before we go, I'd like you to explain to people who are listening, who are thinking, well, maybe I could do something, but aren't sure whether they should, why grassroots activists are so important to the movement. People who don't work in the movement, who, are not looking to change jobs, how can they get involved, not just in donating, and why should they, but in campaigning? And in particular, like, I'm not sure anybody has this misconception, but this is not just for the young folks. You look at any
Totally.
animal rights protests, and I'm proud to be a boomer woman, and there are plenty of boomer women out there all the time. So it's not for any particular class of people, or it runs the gamut, right? And what is the value of grassroots activism? Just the whole picture.
Yeah, I'd say grassroots activism is integral to animal liberation. We will not achieve animal liberation without grassroots activism. It won't be achieved by one group or one person. It's going to be achieved by a bunch of people all across the world who answer to nobody but the animals. And I think, that's really the most important thing to take to heart. And why the grassroots is so important is the grassroots are almost impossible to extinguish and to repress, because it's just, like I said before, it's just made up of individual people driven by passion and who answer to only the animals, and, acting independently. That's the thing that makes all of our organizations and the campaigns of CAFT and ICAW so unique and so winnable. It's just people taking action of their own accord. I think Suzie, can attest, like, CAFT doesn't ask their activists to do anything. They just announce the campaigns, and then individual people take action as they're inspired. And that's really what's going to achieve animal liberation. I mean, we've seen this across every social justice movement in history. And, the animal rights movement is no different. Like it is just going to take a strong, educated, passionate grassroots activist base to achieve animal liberation. And the other part of your question, yes, it's not just young people, or it's not just students or one demographic of people. I'd say some of our best activists, specifically in New York, I can think of a bunch of different activists who are older, who are retired, and who have the time to come out to every single action. And, they're the most reliable, sometimes the most passionate, the most lively. We've had people bring their kids if they can handle that kind of thing to actions, and that's wonderful to see. There are people across like every demographic, every class, every what have you, coming to protest. Like, they are for everybody. So yes. Is there any part of that question that I missed? I feel like I did.
I don't think so, but I did want you to add, like, how can people find you, and how do you suggest they get started with
definitely
getting involved in what you're doing?
Yes, thank you. I'd say visiting our website, animalactivismcollective.com, is the best way. You can see like a list of all of our programs, and you can look and see what program is the best for you, the mentorship program, the pressure campaign program. We also have a map on our website that lists all of our chapters that already exist, that you can go to and find if there's an existing chapter near you. You don't even have to go through AAC. You can just contact your local chapter near you and get started doing pressure campaign activism. You also see,
but if there isn't a local chapter, they can contact you directly.
Yes, you can sign up for our pressure campaign program or the mentorship one. The sign up forms are there. It walks you through exactly what the programs entail. On our website, you can also see another thing AAC does. We're really passionate about like free educational content. So we have like almost 200 educational workshops and live streams that we've hosted, that are free and accessible. You can see when our next convergence is going to be. You can see more information about the summit, the Grassroots Animal Rights Summit that ICAW, AAC, and CAFT are organizing this May. Our website has it.
Amazing. Great.
I was trying so hard to find the reference, but I couldn't. But Rachel Maddow was interviewing someone, Mariann, about some of the No Kings protests and he said something in a pejorative way. The guest said something in a demeaning way about like the grandmothers showing up at the protests, kind of with an eye roll. And Rachel said something like, I would be careful of the grandmas or something like that. And
Well,
it was
seriously, you go to protests about anything, and older women are
Yeah.
going to be a good portion of the people
Yeah.
who are out there fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. But this has been so inspiring. Thank you so much to our guests today, Tehilah of the Animal Activism Collective and Suzie Stork of the Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade. You're so inspiring. This has been just a breath of fresh air. And thank you to those of you listening and watching, tuning in. Thank you. Subscribe, hit like, comment, wherever you're listening or watching this. And remember, for those of you who are able to, you can become a flock member at ourhenhouse.org/support. There's some great perks, including weekly access to bonus content, which we are about to record with our incredible guests today. So if you want to have even more access to their brains, and I think you do, then check that out. Make sure that you follow us on all of the socials as well, and we'll talk to you next time.